Hello and welcome to the Red Jacket Club. This is Andy. I'm here with Brendan, and this is where we talk Cardinals baseball. Today is January 4th, 2023. It's the first episode of the new year of the Red Jacket Club. We're shooting episode 10, where we're going to talk about the bullpen. But before that, I just want to hear from you, Brendan. How you feeling? What's going on in your neck of the woods? How you feeling this New Year's?
Doing well. Made it through the New Year's. Only had two or three too many shots, so I guess better than last year.
Yeah.
But what about you? What was your New Year's like?
New Year's was pretty chill. Usually we're in Florida for New Year's, but this year we stayed home. Just hung out with my brother, his fiance, and didn't get too wild. So pretty relaxed, which was a definite better change of pace.
hmm
But when it comes to Cardinals baseball, I guess how are you feeling? Are you thinking we're going to make another move, or what are your initial thoughts before we start this episode about the offseason so far?
Current thoughts on the roster as it is right now. I kind of think we'll probably be going into the season with this roster. I kind of don't see us making another move. Maybe. I mean, obviously, we'll sign a few people to minor league contracts with invites to spring training. I could see that happening. Other teams seem to start doing that around this time. Other than that, I think we're going to get through the arbitration hearings, which start in February. I think, yeah, February, whenever, just before spring training. So, if anything, that would probably be the time to make any kind of bench move, would be after that. So, but I don't really see us doing too much before the season.
Yeah, who do we have coming up on arbitration? Do you know off the top of your head?
No, there's going to be quite a few guys. Yeah, I'm not sure who all, but
All right. Well, yeah, I feel the same way. I don't think that much is going to change based off of our conversation today. I feel like we have a good idea of where everybody's going to fit into the roles. There are some question marks still out there, so we might as well just get right into it. Like I said, we're going to be talking about the bullpen, and there were some strong suits coming out of the bullpen, especially after last season. We have a lot of things to be confident about, but again, some things to be a little bit questionable on. And we'll just start with our all-star closer, Ryan Helsley. Hell's Bells. If you saw that last year, that was pretty cool. I don't know if you did, Brennan.
hmm
Just the atmosphere during his new walkout sequence is pretty cool. Um, but my initial thoughts on Helsley is that he's really the only pitcher that I'm confident in knowing his role on this team. He was just so good last season, and like there's no way you don't give him the ball to close, even after that game one of the wild card series. That was definitely devastating. But when you look back at his stats, you understand why Ali Marmol was confident in trying to stick with Helsley, but it just didn't seem to work out. So going like kind of thousand height, 1,000 foot view on Helsley. He had 33 games finished last season with 19 saves, which is electric. 64 innings pitched, and had a strikeouts per nine of 13.1. So this guy, I mean, he was just lights out, commanding the back half of the game. Ended with an immaculate inning. So like I said, this guy's our closer for the foreseeable future in my mind. And I know that you stepped a little bit deeper into what Helsley will be able to offer in 2023. So, what are your thoughts on Ryan as we go into the next season?
Yeah, so I did a pretty big deep dive. First off, when it comes to his role, like you were saying, he's no doubt going to be our closer coming into the season. His strikeouts per nine were crazy. He just had an overall really, really good season. So I went to his stat page and I saw last year he had a 4.56 ERA and 47 innings pitched. And I was like, what changed? And he only had 8.9 strikeouts per nine last year. And I was like, okay, I gotta dig into what changed, because a lot of times with pitchers, they change something about their pitch usage and different things like that. And so I found that he in fact did change his pitch usage in 2022, and it was pretty obvious. Honestly, we all know what his best pitch is, and if you were to ask a Cardinal fan on the street what is Helsley known for, they're gonna say his fastball, and he threw his four seamer more than ever at 57% of the time this year. He dropped his changeup, increased his curveball usage, decreased his slider usage. So basically, what he did was he found confidence in his four seamer, because obviously it is one of the best in the game. He throws it 100 plus with no problem. Uh, and what happened also was in two strike counts, he was too reliant on like his off speed, where um, in 2022 he decided just to go straight to his fastball and challenge hitters more often. And it's pretty obvious because in 2021 he put his put away pitch as a fastball. He only used 17% of the time, but in 2022 he used his fastball 29% of the time to put away hitters, and that's a pretty significant increase to the fastball. He also utilizes a cutter in his arsenal, but the main point being is he found confidence in his fastball. He stuck to it. It obviously is his best pitch, and he's going to challenge hitters as much as he can this year. So, really, I could see him. I'm not going to say he's going to repeat this year, because that's a really tough season to repeat. But he's going to challenge guys with his fastball, and if they can't prove to hit it, then he's just going to keep throwing it.
For sure. Yeah. And if he can repeat one thing, the one request that I have out of Ryan Helsley is that he keeps that whip down. We've been talking about it with the starting pitchers. He was great with it this last season, having a whip of .742. And as we talked about last week, a good whip, walks, hits, per innings pitched, is 1.1. So anything below that is excellent. And so when you think about the Cardinals and a lot of what they have been doing over the last couple of seasons, is they've been coming back to win games. And why is that? Well, it's because these guys who are strong in the bullpen, and Helsley's one of those guys. There are a couple other guys that help that as well. But the big thing is these guys keep people off the base paths, and it's to the benefit of the Cardinals as a whole, because it gives us the offense the opportunity to be able to come back and try to win the game if they're keeping people off the bases. So he's just a stellar pitcher. I hope that he's able to keep even just half of what he did last season, so that we can continue to get those big wins at the end of a lot of games. Um, any thoughts on Helsley before we wrap up his talks? I know that I'm just excited to watch him pitch.
Yeah, I hope they do that walkout thing again. I think Edwin
Yeah.
Diaz with the Mets last year kind of made it um, something cool for closers to do, to have kind of like their own walk-up song, or
Hmm.
walkout intro. And it's something they've always had as their own song, but I really like the thought of these closers to really put a personality to themselves, because you only see them once every few days. So I don't know.
Hmm.
I thought that was pretty cool. I don't really have too many other thoughts other than that.
Yeah, when you think about it, you think about Enter Sandman Mariano Rivera coming in the ninth, and you know that the Yankees are going to win that game.
Right.
So yeah, it gives you the satisfaction, and it gives you kind of a jump in energy when you hear Hell's Bells, and then the stadium goes black, and then the red lights come on. It's pretty awesome that teams are starting to do this, because I mean it's at a point it's entertainment. It's something that you got to keep people focused on. While we do agree that most of baseball is a business, you got to keep fans in the seats. And if you're going to do it, why not do it with a little AC/DC and some blackout lighting? So,
Hmm.
um, so the guy that I think kind of helps in that role of keeping guys off bases and is setting up Helsley likely next season is Giovanni Gallegos. And I think a lot of people sleep on Giovanni Gallegos. He's, to me, one of our best tools in the tool belt. He's the guy that is going to come in and pitch. He could pitch 1, 2, or 3 innings and keep guys off bases, um, shut down in terrible settings, have no outs, bases loaded, come in and get out of the inning. So just again, another 1,000 height view for Helsley, or I'm sorry, for Gallegos. Over the last 3 seasons, Gallegos had a 3.09 ERA with 154 innings pitched, and that WHIP was down below 1.01 at 9.33. So he's just able to do what is needed to be done to get to Helsley. He lost some innings from 21 to 22 because Helsley was so good. But if he's in that area where um, he can set up Helsley, I think we have the strongest 1-2 punch coming out of the bullpen. What do you got on Giovanni Gallegos?
Yeah, I agree. And I was actually really surprised when I started looking into the stats. I mean, I knew he had a good season, but there was a lot of talk because there were a few games that he did blow, but there was kind of some negative talk around him. But after looking into it, he had a really good 2022. He had a 3.05 ERA and 59 innings pitched. You mentioned that he did get some innings stolen from him from Helsley, which makes sense. But I would like him to get back to like that 80 inning mark that he had in 21. Um, I could see him being one of those multi-inning guys, like you were saying. That would be cool if we started to stretch him out a little more, since we know we have that closer role filled. It's no longer a question mark, so now's the time to maybe look at Gallegos to go maybe 1.2 innings, 2 innings, those kind of situations. And something to look into here, his whip actually did increase from 884 to 1.017 this last year. And it was no wonder why I was like, man, it kind of seems like he's always pitching with people on. And I mean, it makes it obvious that he did regress a tiny bit. And a 1.017 is still a very good whip. But from 0.884, it is a little bit of regression. But that is the highest his whip has been since 2018. And even then, it was a very small sample size with 11 innings pitched. So I'm not worried about that. I think he's going to kind of regress back to the norm and maybe have one of those like 0.90 whips this year. It sounds weird to say, but it seems like it was a down year for Gallegos, even though he really was a really good reliever.
Yeah, it kind of stinks when you outperform one year and then you just regress a little bit and it seems like it's a down year.
Right.
But I mean, I don't have any problems with Gallegos. Like I said, I think he and Helsley are probably the best 1-2 punch in the Central. I know we're working with Devin Williams up in Brewers country, but like who else is there to kind of set up for Williams? Because I don't even know if Williams has really taken over the closer role for the
Yeah,
Brewers.
he has. He's pretty elite.
Yeah,
I mean, if they still had Hader, they would be in conversation for the best 1-2
right.
punch, but they made that move for some reason.
Right. That's kind of where I was getting at is that Hater's gone. So like who else are you working with? And then you can't talk to the Reds, you can't talk to the Cubs, even though that they're trying to make moves. They just kind of we'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, Gallegos and Helsley, I think are a good pairing, and I think that's exactly where Gallegos is going to slot in. He's going to set up for Helsley, can be utilized as a multi-innings guy, and I just see him doing the consistent numbers that he's been doing over the last couple of seasons. Like I said, I took a look at the last 3 seasons and his averages over that, and he's finishing with a 3.09 ERA and a whip under 1. So I don't think that we have any problems with Helsley going in. Um, any thoughts to close up on Mr. Gallegos?
Not much other than, yeah, he's going to be our seventh, eighth inning guy depending on the game. I mean, we'll see Helsley in the eighth inning as well at some point this year because the game is changing where the closer doesn't only have to pitch in the ninth, which I totally agree with. But yeah, we'll see Gallegos in that setup role right behind Helsley.
For sure, for sure. And the other player that I think fits into the similar role, who we talked about having some starting potential, is Andre Palante. Palante, we already kind of talked about in our rotation talks conversation last week, but Palante is a guy that we're talking about multi innings coming out of the pen. He started last year. He started 10 games and had a record of 6-5. So not like a stellar record, but I mean, it's a consistent record, it's a winning record. But was able to knock up 108 innings pitched and a 3.17 ERA. Um, Again, just solid, consistent, and can get innings. And so I think this is why I compare him to Gallegos. He's got a lot of opportunities ahead of him because of the season that he put together last year. So he obviously can go into the rotation if needed, or he can kind of fill in a setup role or a multi-innings relief role. Tell me what you kind of saw in when you dove into the stats of Andre Palante.
Yeah, we talked about him a lot last episode when it came to the starting rotation, since he was a decent part of that starting rotation. I think it was the stretch through June and July where he made those 10 starts and was pretty effective. I think he's going to be one of our most reliable arms in 23. He's going to be kind of that role player. He can do like a multi-inning type deal, but he could also get us out of an inning, a very tight situation. Something that really stuck out is he's got a 64% ground ball rate compared to league average 42%. And with our defense, that just pairs up really well. Kind of the player that I remember that would come in and just you can bank on him getting a ground ball. That was Seth Maness. And I remember every time he came in, bases loaded with one out. I was like, oh, okay, we got it. No problem. Ground ball. That happened all the time. So Palante is kind of that guy, but he's only 24 years old with a lot of potential. I really like Palante. I think he's, like I said, I think he's going to play all kinds of different roles this year, and I think he's the type of guy to embrace that. Yeah, and I don't know. Well, I got a few other things that I'd like to talk about. It looks like so he doesn't strike people out, which is okay, but sometimes you do need that swing and miss ability. So maybe he does find that strikeout pitch that he's kind of looking for, and he does walk above average walk rate, which he is only 24 years old. I think he's going to figure those two things out. I don't think he'll ever be a top tier strikeout pitcher, but hopefully we see a little bit of the lower walks, higher strikeouts this year.
Yeah, and then, until he figures that out, obviously, if he stays on the Cardinals, he's got the ability of a elite defense behind him that will
Exactly,
kind
yeah.
of help him through that problem. But yeah, I kind of agree. I do remember him walking people a lot, which is just the average struggles of a big league pitcher. But all his other accolades kind of cover for that. So, and I again am feeling pretty confident in Palante. The three guys that we just talked about, Helsley, Palante, and Gallegos, were slotted in my who can we rely on kind of category. And I think those three guys are going to be the biggest tools in the tool belt come next season. And I think the other note that I had was that Palante was the only guy kind of in this um, bullpen that I think is able to step into that starting role. Obviously, we already saw him do that, but other than being a setup pitcher, like I could see if Jack Flaherty's not putting things together and we need to give him a break or allow him to figure something out, or Steven Matz is still needing to get like innings breaks. I see us relying on Palante a lot in those roles in order to kind of get through um, a lot of the season, obviously because that's what he did a lot last year. So um, do want to move on to some other pitchers that I know. Well, we'll talk about one of my question marks. I'm not sure if this is the same for you, but Jordan Hicks is kind of a big question mark in my opinion.
Hmm.
As we talked about Jack Flaherty being the big question mark in the rotation for me, I think Jordan Hicks is the big question mark for me when it comes to the bullpen because at this point, I really don't know what his role will be. It's not necessarily clear. Obviously, we have Helsley locking up that closer role that he fit into when he first came into the league. But since then, obviously, he was injured, had to be out for the COVID season due to some health issues, which completely understandable. But it just the numbers haven't been there. It's kind of been hard to just guess where he's going to fit into this bullpen. So I know that last year we were trying to get him to start games, especially because we ran into some issues of having a lot of injuries, people out. But I just don't think that that's the role that he fits in. Obviously, last year he started 8 games, had a 3-6 record with a 4.84 ERA, which is just not good. Not something that you can rely on when it comes to, again, if Flaherty's not figuring it out or Matz is still needing to kind of be limited on his innings. I don't think that that's the person that you rely on. And again, I kind of just took it over um, the last couple of seasons he was closing. Well, in 2019, he had a 3.14 ERA and 14 games saved on 21 finished games. So I don't, sometimes it's just like a thing where a guy fits, like he knows his role or feels comfortable in a certain role. And it seems like that's where he feels better is at the back half of a game or at the end of a game. But I just don't know where he's going to go if we have those spots filled up. So kind of give me what your thoughts are on Jordan Hicks.
Yeah, obviously he was super exciting when he came up. Everyone loved watching his fastball. He was throwing 105 miles an hour with plenty of movement. I mean, it was ridiculous when he first came up. We thought he was going to be the next Aroldis Chapman. I mean, we had such high expectations for Hicks. Unfortunately, he did get hurt. He did take a season off, and it just hasn't seemed like he could put it back together because it would make sense if we're talking, it's a question mark for this year, but really he had a full season this year. He had 61 innings pitched, and that does include some starts, which I'll get to those in a minute. But for a reliever, 61 innings, 60 to 80 innings or so is pretty much a full season. So he had time to pitch and to show that he can be effective. But obviously, he didn't do that with a 4.84 ERA. His walk rate was through the roof at 5 walks per 9, which you just can't have that. That's way too many walks.
Hmm.
And as far as the starter role, honestly, when that was first announced, I kind of already had a bad feeling about it. I kind of figured he wasn't a starter. And it's kind of like that Carlos Martinez situation that we had where Martinez was plenty effective out of the bullpen, and then went back to the starting role, struggled a lot, and just kind of lost, like wasn't sure what their role was. But yeah, I don't see him as a starter, so we'll see. I think Hicks basically he's going to be competing with the next three guys that we talk about, and one of those guys, the logic is hopefully one of them will turn into an elite pitcher, which one of them totally can. I think all four really have a lot of potential, but basically my final thought is if he can find the strike zone, then I think he does have the potential to be very effective.
Yeah. Yeah. My biggest question about Hicks is, like we said, his spot in the lineup is kind of taken, and he's not really shown that he can adapt into that other role that we tried to put him in. So what do you think when it comes to the deadline and uh, we need some type of asset that the Cardinals can maybe get rid of some pitching that they don't necessarily need? Do you think Hicks fits into that kind of conversation, or kind of give me your thoughts on that?
Well, I think for him to be in that conversation, one of the other three relievers that we're about to talk about would have to also turn elite, and Hicks would have to have a pretty decent season going for him. But then again, I mean, he's either going to blow up and have zero trade value or do really well, and you can't have enough bullpen depth. So I kind of don't see much for him in the trade market unless we were a team that was way out of it and you have an elite reliever. Um, but yeah, I
Yeah.
kind of just don't see that
I mean,
happening.
I don't see how Hicks can ever have zero trade value. I know that obviously he could get hurt again, and that could probably put him as close to zero as possible. But if he has just a middle year, like I don't see how he isn't valuable to any team. I feel like the Cardinals could definitely get something for him, especially if we're really struggling for starting pitching. Like I hope we aren't, but there's always the possibility. Um, I don't
So
know.
if we were to trade Hicks for a starting pitcher, then we'd have to package him with someone else as well.
Yeah.
Which
Well,
like who would that be? You know?
that's kind of the current problem with the Cardinals in general is that they have 40 guys and it's like what how do you get rid of one? Because if you get running rid of one, then you got to get rid of two. Like if you have to package somebody, you can't just get rid of one guy. So I don't know. I just don't see his value to the Cardinals growing unless he really steps it up in a certain way or shows that he can adapt to other spots in the roster. But that's just kind of where I think things lie for Jordan Hicks going into 2023. You
Mhm.
have these next three guys a little bit more broken out than I do. How about we talk about Genesis Cabrera? I know last season he was a little bit underutilized. I think I like him and how he has that sweeping motion with all his pitches. Um, I know that he's not as he doesn't have the command that a lot of these other guys have, but he does have obviously a very good fastball, good motion. But what are your thoughts when it comes to Genesis Cabrera?
Yeah, I really don't have too many thoughts. He had a 4.63 ERA in 44 innings this year. I think he has potential to be a very electric pitcher. I mean, I love like his delivery and all that. But it's just one of those things. Yeah, sure, he looks great. Looks like he'd be great, but he's still walking people. Can't obviously he can't find the zone. Um, and my only thought is he's just got to prove it to us.
Yeah, and I mean he's just kind of he hasn't had really the innings to do that. I guess in 21 he had 70 innings pitched and he did pretty well. Last season I like I said I think he got some innings cut because again Helsley was chewing up a lot of the back half of the game. And we had a lot of starters that were able to shove it well into the sixth or seventh inning. So there just wasn't a lot of room for him. I feel like if he does have the chance to shine, that he will definitely do that. But at this point, you're right. If we don't know what his real upside potential is because he hasn't really gotten the innings. Um, Next guy that we can talk about is Chris Stratton. If I'm saying that correctly, I can't remember his first name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So much preparation on my part when it came into these next couple of pitchers. But for Stratton, I know we acquired him at the deadline. Um, he came in to pitch a little bit for us last season, but I don't know that much about him. So I guess did you do a deep dive? What do you think more about Chris Stratton?
Yeah, so when we traded for him, I did quite a bit of a deep dive because I love these small moves that people don't really see, and I love because once they do blow up, I mean maybe not, maybe Stratton is just a very average pitcher this year, but if he does blow up, then I can say that I saw it coming. So I did a deep dive when we got traded for him, and I was excited for him because his FIP, which was 3.6, and I'll explain FIP in a second, was much better than his actual ERA, which was 5.09. So what FIP is it's called fielding independent pitching. It's similar to ERA, but it focuses solely on the events a pitcher has the most control over, uh, which are strikeouts, unintentional walks, hit by pitches, and home runs. So basically, it entirely removes results on balls hit into the field of play. So it's taking the defense out of the aspect. It's basically saying anything that was hit on the ground or in play doesn't count towards that. And it's something that I like to look at if there's a dramatic difference. And you got to keep in mind he was with the Pirates. So the Pirates didn't have this great defense that the Cardinals have. And to further back up my point, he had his 5.09 ERA in 40 innings with Pittsburgh, but then he comes over to the Cardinals and has a 2.78 ERA in 22 innings. So I kind of I feel, and obviously maybe we had a better pitching coaching staff, but I feel like I kind of predicted that where um, our fielders are much better than Pittsburgh's. So he was due for those numbers to kind of regress to the mean, and that clearly happened. But other than that, the things that stand out to me is his pitch arsenal is actually really good. He's in the 99th percentile in spin rate with his fastball and his curveball, and he's got a very high spin rate on his slider. So he has some elite pitches. He's just got to put them together. And I think he's got the potential to be a lights out reliever. A lot of people think that I'm crazy probably for having this take, but I think he will eventually fill in for our back end guys like Gallegos and Helsley whenever they need a day of rest. And having that kind of reliever in your bullpen is super effective and useful.
Definitely, yeah. And now that I actually look at his baseball reference page, I'm looking particularly at 2018. This guy was a starter. I guess he maybe had some struggles along the way, but I mean, he started 26 games out of 20 games, 28 games he played, and had a shutout that year. 145 innings pitched. So if he can find a way back there, which as the numbers are trending, like you said, that ERA from 5.09 to 2.78 going from Pittsburgh to the Cardinals, that's an insane difference. So
Hmm.
maybe he just kind of needed a new perspective on things.
Or better
If
defense.
or better defense. If trends look up and are out there, I could see you being right about this guy kind of exploding on the scene next season. Yeah, that makes me a little bit more excited about that trade. Stinks that we didn't keep Quintana out of it, but at the same
Yeah.
time, there's still a potential upside. So that's really cool. The next guy, I really have no idea because this guy's kind of coming out of nowhere, really. Wilking Rodriguez of the Mexico League, right? I know he played one
Yep.
one year, like a little bit for the Yankees or the Royals. Tell me a little bit more about Wilking Rodriguez.
Yeah, and I keep doing these deep dives on these very minor moves. I think they're so much fun to look into. So Wilking Rodriguez, we picked him up through the Rule 5 draft this offseason, which we talked a little bit about our Rule 5 draft pickups. We have a few other relievers that we got. Um, but anyway, he hasn't had big league experience since 2014, which was only 2 innings pitched, so he really doesn't have any big league experience. He mainly spent time in the Mexico League, but he also played in the Venezuelan Winter League. he used to be a starter early in his minor league career, turned reliever. Um, Basically, though, the thing that really drew the Cardinals' attention to this guy is he had a 1.95 ERA in 50 innings pitched with in 2022 with 13 and a half strikeouts per nine, and that is around the Ryan Helsley. I think just above the Ryan Helsley mark. Obviously, I'm not sure what the competition looks like in the Mexican leagues, but he is a high strikeout guy with potential. I'm excited to see what he does for us. And this is the type of pitcher where I could see him being with us the whole season and having a pretty average year, or he could get released out of spring training and I wouldn't know any difference. It's interesting to look at that he did have an elite year in the Mexico League. So it's just one of those low risk, high reward type moves that you never know. Something could turn out or not.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing to think about is obviously the Cardinals have scouts and everything that know way better than us.
Yep.
And they, instead of signing him to a minor league contract, they put him right on the 40 man. So
Mm-hmm.
they see something in this guy. And from all the videos that I see coming on Twitter, it looks like he's got some really good stuff, really good strikeout stuff, like we see in his numbers. So he could be more than meets the eye when it comes to the type of pitcher that he is. Obviously, it's a little weird that he just, I guess, couldn't hack it when he came up at the time. Obviously, there are things going on in everybody's lives and uh, keeps you from moving on in the league. But if the Cardinals want to give him a chance, then they might as well give him the chance that they can. So. I think the that can move right into our last guy, and the last big question mark that I have in terms of what role is he going to play? How is he going to fit into this bullpen slash rotation? That's Dakota Hudson. Obviously, he's the biggest question mark for a lot of people, a lot of Cardinals fans. And when it comes to Dakota, I mean, last season was just unfortunate, really. It was just kind of a bummer. He had all the opportunity in the world and just wasn't able to kind of come through on it. He had, at least in the last 3 seasons, he started 35 games, came away with a 12-9 record and a 3.99 ERA with 187 innings pitched. So Cardinals are giving him every opportunity that they can when he's healthy, and he's just not putting anything together, which just kind of gives me anxiety, really. Like, what are we going to do with this guy? And I kind of put a note on here that said he's the opposite of Moneyball. You know, the guys in the Moneyball room were trying to get guys on base. Well, pitchers are typically trying to keep guys off of base, and all Dakota Hudson does is put guys on base. So, um, not exactly what you want on your team. What are you thinking about Dakota Hudson?
Yeah, so Hudson is kind of the reason why Palante is in his role now. We needed a guy to step up in that role player type role. Palante has proven to taken over that role from Hudson. But with that being said, I do think we might need to be a little bit patient with Hudson. Looking, and people are going to hate me for saying that too. Um,
I kind of
Looking
hate
at
you for
his
saying that.
yeah, I know. And I might hate me for saying that in a couple months as well. But looking at his track record, he was a big prospect coming up through the minors. He had multiple seasons in the minors where he just he was lights out coming up. He finished fifth in Rookie of the Year in 2019 with a 3.35 ERA and 174 innings pitched. But then the old Tommy John came around, and that seemed to kind of regress him quite a bit. Obviously, this last season, like you said, he was not good. He had a 4.45 ERA and 139 innings. Had a few spot starts here and there, but here's the stat that's really bad. He had the worst walk to strikeout ratio in the MLB. and it's actually nothing new. I think it was back in 2019, even though he uh, was it 19 or 20, one of those years. Um, he had that same crown. He wore the worst walk to strikeout ratio in the MLB. So puts people on, doesn't strike people out. So not a very effective pitcher. But I don't know. Good news is he's proven to be healthy because he threw 139 innings. So there's some kind of potential to somehow progress into the pitcher that he once was. But the bad news is he's just not an effective pitcher anymore
Mhm.
since the 2019 season. So I want to be a little bit of I want to be a little patient with Hudson. If he comes out and just blows up and looks like his 2022 self, then he's not going to have a very long leash. But I do want to say there might be some kind of potential in him, and maybe I'm just way too high on some of these pitchers. But I don't know. That's all I got for Hudson.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of done waiting on him to show up because he's obviously, like I said, he's had all the opportunity of the world, especially even last season when you had two starting pitchers out. I mean,
Yeah,
that's your time to shine, kid. And I mean, he came in with 139 innings pitched and let up 141 hits. So that's almost a hit for every inning he's pitching.
yeah. It's not
And
good.
it's just with letting guys on base and not getting the outs that you need when you're there. It's not something that's going to add to you being a valuable asset. So I don't see him getting out of the bullpen unless we get like three injured starting pitchers.
Hmm.
Because I feel like we have guys that will fit in or will bring somebody up before we even really give him that shot again. But maybe I'm being a little too harsh on the guy. I don't
No,
know.
I would agree with you there. I mean,
Yeah.
we talked last episode about our starting pitching depth. I think Libertor probably gets the start before Hudson would. I would think. Um, we'll see, but I would agree with you that we have some better options than Hudson right now in the bullpen.
Yeah, I think we do too. So I know we have a couple other guys. You just mentioned one of them, Matthew Libertor. Do we want to talk about Libertor, or do we just kind of want to wrap things up, get into the around the league?
I'm ready to wrap some things up. I think Libby was more of a starting pitcher type
Starting pitcher, yeah.
conversation.
And we did kind of cover him last week. So
Yeah.
um yeah, I mean, in terms of the outlooks, there are still some question marks. I think there are a couple more question marks than there are with our starting rotation, as much as people don't, I think, agree with that from what I see online. But um, I think we have three pretty elite guys that if they come in riding off the last season, that will be just fine, especially when we have guys like Michaelis and Wainwright able to every fifth day go at least 5, 6 innings, kind of holding your bullpen off until the later innings. So I'm confident in this bullpen. I think if we address some issues mechanically or pitch arsenal wise, I think we can make those question marks kind of go away. Any final thoughts when it comes to the bullpen?
The main thing with the bullpen is you hope that one of these four, Hicks, Cabrera, Stratton, or Rodriguez, one of those four at least will turn into a pretty solid relief option this year. Hopefully, at least two of them will just be innings eaters that we can throw in when we're down. And then, other than that, I just hope they all stay healthy.
Yeah, I think we wish health and well-being for everybody because we don't have a lot of other people that we can go to.
Yeah.
Um, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles. We'll see how it goes. But with that, let's kind of talk about what's going on around the league. There isn't a whole lot. There was some breaking news today about Rafael Devers, but I'll let you start off with who you got at the top of your list, and go from there.
All right, so yeah, I think everything is pretty much slowing down. Everyone's preparing for their arbitration hearings, um, and spring training is just around the corner, which is kind of cool to say. But the first one, Evan Longoria signed with the Diamondbacks, and people kind of forget that he has been one of the most consistent players in the last 14 years. The contract is 1 year, 4 million. Uh, I don't have much to really dive in, but I do want to say the Diamondbacks might be a pretty fun team to watch this year. More fun than in years past, that's for sure.
Mm.
And then the next thing is Carlos Correa is still out there, like you said, or I think you said Devers. But anyway, Correa is still out there, still not signed. I was talking to you off recording a little bit earlier, and it seems like what's being held up is I think Steve Cohen is trying to make a contract that's never happened before, some kind of clause that has to do with health, which I don't think we've really ever seen that, because a player would not sign that contract, if they're like, oh well, if you get hurt, then you get paid less, and a player's not going to sign that because they're, well, I don't want to bank on that. But let's see, Boris and Correa don't want to lessen the years or the money, so I would assume what's happening is Steve Cohen and his team is saying, okay, well, if you don't want to lessen the years or money, then we can't bank on you not getting injured.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think what's weird is the Mets obviously have every ball in their court. Like Correa doesn't have much of a negotiation leverage, because it is his ankle and it is the like surgically repaired and could get worse and worse, especially into an age 40 season. So I don't know. I think if he, I think the Mets want to sign him, and um, if the union allows, I think that they will. I think that whatever deal that they shake out that gets approved will get signed. I don't, from what Ken Rosenthal reported, it sounds like it'll be drastically different than what we've seen, which is that 12-year, 315 million. Um, so I don't, it's very weird. It's weird that we have to go through this whole thing to get approval on some sort of like either you're confident in him or you're not. Like especially at this point, you've been talking about it for long enough. You should have really held off and got some more information because this is just kind of ridiculous at this point. I'm not a big fan of Carlos Correa to begin with. So I don't see why people were giving him 12 years. Like I understand that he's a good asset, but like he's had injury histories. Like I don't know. It just seems like a terrible business deal coming from a guy who's supposed to be one of the wealthiest men in the world, and it's just all weird. One of the things that I found interesting that Ken said though was just the mindset of what how Carlos Correa will come out of this. Like, will he take the negotiations as a negative, come onto the field and not have a good mindset? And he's proven to be a little hot-headed, but I mean, if you
Mm-hmm.
saw anything on Twitter yesterday, he had an Instagram story where his son was wearing a I Heart New York shirt. So, I mean, he's hinting that he wants to be there. He was all smiles in the picture, and he said, whatever his son's name is coming to work with dad today. So, I don't know if he'll necessarily be upset, but he does have the temperament to likely get there. So, this is all just kind of weird. I'm kind of over it. I don't know if you are, because
Yeah.
I still don't think that even if they do sign him, even if they do get him, that the Mets will. I mean, they'll be good. They'll obviously probably win 100 games, but it's still like, especially with how the offseason is set up or the postseason is set up now, like it doesn't even matter if you win your division. So
Mm-hmm.
this all just seems kind of like crazy wasting time to me, but I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, he fits into the New York atmosphere, so I see it getting done. And Steve Cohen just wants all the star power he could possibly have. So eventually, I think it'll happen, but I think it is getting dragged out a little bit by the media. But yeah, I don't have much else to say about that.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on to a move that the Cubs actually made, and that's bringing on Eric Hosmer on another one of their 1-year deals. We don't know the numbers yet. I'm pretty sure it was 1 year though, and they continue to just make these signings where they hope that these players turn into something the first half of the season, so that they can ship them onto a competitive team. That's what I assume their plan is. I don't think it's a bad plan at all. I think the Pirates are kind of doing the same thing. It's just a way that you can retool your team, um, and also have some kind of names on the field. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching the Cubs some of the games last year. I'm like, who is that? Like, who? I don't even know half their lineup, and that's kind of hard for me not to know like some of the players in a starting lineup. So now they've got these big names, well, names that people know of,
Yeah.
Eric Hosmer and Cody Bellinger and stuff like that. So I don't disagree with these moves. I think it's smart for the Cubs, but I just hope that they don't do very well this season,
Yeah.
because we don't
Just to
want.
Sorry, just to talk about the Cubs for a second. And this is not a slight at Ian Happ at all, because I hate watching Ian Happ come to the plate because I know he's going to get a base hit off the Cardinals.
Yeah,
Like, he's so good, but I still think he's their best player.
yeah,
Um,
for
like,
sure.
there's nothing else like these guys that they are signing. The reason they're getting them for these 1 year deals is because they really haven't proven. It's all like Matt Carpenter did last year. They're hoping that they can prove that they can earn more money in the next year, and they either can or they can't. And like you said, I hope that it doesn't go well for the Cubs in terms of a player mindset. I hope that it does go well for them, but I just like it's weird to see a whole bunch of average players at this point in their career being added to one team. It's like kind of the opposite of the Mets. Like, you're just getting a
Yeah,
whole bunch of superstars of before,
yeah,
and not really not really putting together an all-star team like the Mets are. But I don't know.
yeah. It's they're making enough moves to sell tickets basically, and
Yeah.
I definitely don't knock them for that. I totally understand, but we just gotta hope that it doesn't turn into them getting some good prospects in return. Um, so moving on to the biggest deal that actually just happened before we hopped on, Rafael Devers extends with the Red Sox for 11 years, 331 million, which comes out to 30 mil a year, which that's the price point of an elite player, and I think he is. He's one of the most underrated stars in the league, in my opinion. He's only 26 years old, so they signed him through his 37 age season, which I think is perfect. They're going to get him right through his prime. And yeah, I don't know. I like this move a lot for the Red Sox.
Yeah, and I think it's the cherry on top of really like the crap sandwich that was the Red Sox offseason. Um,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
they were kind of getting the fans were getting shoved into a locker really, and not really getting anything in return from their ownership, which this was like the last straw. They had full control of this guy, so they had to go out and get him. And if they didn't, then I don't I see another curse of the Bambino. Like, I don't they would have to completely rebuild. They're gonna wait forever to get to another postseason run like they had over the last couple of years. But the fact that they were able to do it, this is a guy that they can build a whole team around. Like,
Yeah,
he could be. It's especially since he just got voted into the Hall of Fame. But like, he could be the big Poppy of this next generation. Like, I
hmm,
see him being that good of a player, and so he's got so much potential. He's a great third baseman, and all star the last 2 seasons. So he's proven that he's worth what they offered him. It sounds like it was a little hard to get to that offer, but yeah, I think this is a great signing for the Red Sox. If this guy got away, I don't know what Red Sox fans would do. But it sounds like he's going to be there for a while, and I think everything just goes up from here for him, especially with his upward trajectory over the last couple of seasons. Yeah, always excited to see these young guys get the contracts that they're due.
Yep. That's all I got to say about around the league.
Yeah, absolutely. So the only other items that I really wanted to close up with is these cool little topics about the World Baseball Classic. So especially because it revolves around the Cardinals. So Tommy Edman and Lars Nootbaar have committed to playing in the World Baseball Classic, and they're not playing for Team USA, which sucks because I want Team USA to win, but they're playing for their um, quote unquote home countries. They have relatives, or not relatives, their parents, one of their parents at least, is from these countries. So Tommy Edmonds playing for South Korea, and Lars Nootbaar is playing for Japan. And from what I understand, from what I read, is that this is for both of these teams, it's the first time anybody not native to Japan has played for those teams in the World Baseball Classic. So that's just really cool to me. It shows that these guys who we have on our team are big enough talents to where they could get recruited to play for a national team. I mean, you're thinking about, I mean, both of those countries have millions of people in them and millions of people that want to play baseball. Probably 100,000 people that want to play baseball, but you get my point. Like
Mm-hmm.
the fact that the Cardinals was able to grow these two guys into being national talents for their nations. I just found that to be really awesome.
Yeah, I'm super excited for the World Baseball Classic. Do you know how often they do the World? Is it like every 4 years or something?
It's either every four or every three. I can't remember.
I think it might be every three. I think that might because it says the United States won their first title in 2017. Because I was like, that doesn't add up to 4 years, so it might be every three. But anyway,
It
I
is
did look
every
up.
4 years. Sorry.
Oh, it is. Well, how does
Yeah.
that line up? Because
Probably because COVID maybe screwed something up.
oh yeah, yep, that's probably it. Yeah, that was prime COVID time, so that would make sense if they skipped a year or something.
Hmm.
Because that would have been their. I don't know. I'm just gonna agree with you and say yes every 4 years. But I did look up the dates when they start. So this spring training is gonna be super weird because we're gonna have our guys gearing up. The first spring training game is February 25th, and then looks like we'll play for about a week and a half before the. Well, I bet they won't even show up to spring training. They'll probably just go straight to the World Baseball Classic.
Yeah,
So
I would imagine unless they have to report to spring training for whatever club reason. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, I would expect these guys who are playing for different countries to probably just report directly
yeah,
to wherever they need to go.
right. And it's just gonna be kind of odd because all the superstars in the game aren't going to be in spring training, which obviously spring training doesn't really mean anything. But I mean, it'll be weird for the younger guys not to have the guys that you look up to like Goldie and Arenado not be there in spring
Hmm.
training. It's not a big deal in my opinion, but it's just kind of something to look at, something interesting.
Yeah, and it looks like it's in Miami this year. Am I getting that right?
Really? Let's go to Miami.
World Baseball Classic team schedule. Um, I don't know. I I'm excited for it. I apparently know nothing about it. Um,
I'm gonna watch every game. It says Phoenix and Miami. I think there's like
yeah.
different pools or something where.
Yeah, it sounds well, the first game looks like it's you well, for USA is between USA and Colombia, and that's in Phoenix. So, I don't know. And the other thing that we can talk about is that Adam Wainwright, Miles Michaelis, Nolan Arenado, and Paul Goldschmidt are all playing for Team USA. So, like you said, yeah, it's going to be weird that some of these guys that I mean, and I know what you meant when you said that like spring training doesn't really mean anything in terms of like it doesn't go toward any record or whatever. But um, for fans, there are some fans that only know Cardinal baseball from being in Florida, and
Yep.
so that like that means a lot to them. So that kind of sucks. But at the same time, it's going to be really cool just to watch. I mean, we got six guys going to the World Baseball Classic from our major league roster. So Hopefully none of them get injured. Hopefully it's fun and entertaining as it always seems to be. Um, I'm excited for it, and I'm excited for those guys who get to play for Japan and Korea because those teams are really cool as well.
Hmm.
Nootbaar is going to get to play with Otani, which
Ooh,
will
that's so
which
cool.
will be really cool. I unfortunately don't know anybody else on the Japan or Korean teams, but you know that's
Yeah.
life. Um,
I'm sure we would know a few names if we pulled up the roster, like Suzuki for the
yeah,
Cubs. Seiya Suzuki, I bet he plays for Japan or Korea. I'm not sure. I don't
hmm
know my
I think
uh
Suzuki's Japanese, but
yeah.
watch me just sound completely ignorant there. Do
Yeah.
you have anything else that you want to wrap up with, or are we good to go?
I'm good to go, man.
Yeah, like you said, spring training is just right around the corner. We got about 85 days left until opening day. Um, so that means spring training's even closer. But other than that, excited for for the rotation and for the bullpen. Next talks we'll probably do outfield. Would you say?
Most likely, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
I
because
would say so.
I got a lot of thoughts on the outfield. I'm excited.
Yeah.
This outfield can either explode, which I think it will, or it could be kind of okay. And so we'll talk about that next time. But with that, this has been the Red Jacket Club. I thank you all for joining us. You can find us on Twitter at red_jacket club. You can find us on YouTube if you just search the Red Jacket Club. And yeah, that's been the episode. Thank you for listening and thank you for joining club. We'll see you next time.